In this video, we'll cover everything within the bioenergetics topic, from how plants capture and use energy through photosynthesis to how organisms release energy through respiration and how these processes support metabolism. Today, we're examining the basic photosynthesis reaction and its chemical equation, investigating the environmental factors that can limit its rate, looking at practical methods for measuring these rates, and finally exploring how plants utilize the glucose they produce. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants use energy from sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. It's one of the most important biological processes on our planet. The word photosynthesis gives us clues about what's happening. Photo relates to light, and synthesis means putting together. So, photosynthesis is literally using light to build compounds. This process takes place in the chloroplasts of green plant cells. These specialized structures contain pigments like chlorophyll that absorb light. Chlorophyll specifically absorbs red and blue light while reflecting green light, which is why most plants appear green to our eyes. When light strikes these pigments, energy is transferred from the environment to the chloroplasts. This energy transfer powers the chemical reactions of photosynthesis. An important characteristic of photosynthesis is that it's an endothermic reaction. This means it requires energy input, in this case, from sunlight. The energy from light is transferred from the environment into the chemical bonds of glucose. We can represent photosynthesis with a word equation. Carbon dioxide plus water gives glucose plus oxygen. Or more formally, with a chemical equation, this equation shows us that 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combine with 6 molecules of water using light energy to produce 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. Now let's examine what affects how quickly this process occurs. The rate of photosynthesis can be limited by several environmental factors. The first limiting factor is light intensity. Since light provides the energy for photosynthesis, the rate typically increases as light intensity increases. However, this relationship isn't unlimited. As the graph shows, the rate increases steadily with light intensity only up to a certain point. Beyond this point, increasing light intensity no longer increases the rate of photosynthesis. This happens because another factor has become limiting. When light is abundant, either temperature or carbon dioxide concentration typically becomes the next limiting factor. Carbon dioxide concentration is our second limiting factor. CO2 is one of the raw materials needed for photosynthesis. Similar to light intensity, as CO2 levels increase, the rate of photosynthesis increases, but only up to a point. The graph flattens out when another factor becomes limiting. Temperature is the third major limiting factor. Photosynthesis involves enzyme controlled reactions, and these enzymes are affected by temperature. At low temperatures, the enzymes work more slowly, limiting the rate of photosynthesis. As temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis increases as enzymes work more efficiently. However, if temperatures get too high, for example, around 45 degrees C, the enzymes begin to denature or become damaged. This causes a rapid decline in the photosynthesis rate. The amount of chlorophyll can also limit photosynthesis. If a plant has been affected by disease or lacks nutrients, like magnesium, its chloroplasts may be damaged. Magnesium is needed to make chlorophyll. Without enough chlorophyll, the plant's ability to absorb light decreases, reducing photosynthesis rates. These limiting factors don't work in isolation. They interact with each other. At any given moment, one factor will be the limiting factor. This is the factor that, if changed, would have the greatest effect on the rate of photosynthesis. For example, On a bright summer day, carbon dioxide might be the limiting factor for a plant. Adding more CO2 would increase photosynthesis rates, but adding more light wouldn't help because light is already abundant. We can see these interactions in graphs that show the effect of multiple factors. For instance, a graph might show photosynthesis rates at different light intensities for two different temperatures. At the lower temperature, such as 15 degrees Celsius, the line levels off at a lower point than at the higher temperature, such as 25 degrees Celsius. This shows that temperature becomes limiting once light is abundant. Similarly, graphs showing the effects of light intensity and CO2 concentration demonstrate that at higher CO2 levels, the plant can use more light before another factor becomes limiting. Scientists measure photosynthesis rates in various ways. One common method uses aquatic plants like Canadian pondweed. As the plant photosynthesizes, it produces oxygen, which forms bubbles. The rate at which bubbles are produced corresponds to the rate of photosynthesis. In a typical experiment, a light source is placed at a specific distance from the pondweed. The plant is allowed to photosynthesize for a set time period, and the oxygen produced is collected in a capillary tube. The length of the gas bubble in the tube is proportional to the volume of oxygen produced. This setup allows scientists to investigate how different factors affect photosynthesis. They might vary light intensity by changing the distance between the light source and plant. When using light as a variable, it's important to understand the inverse square law. This states that light intensity decreases in proportion to the square of the distance. For example, if you double the distance between the light source and plant, the light intensity becomes 4 times smaller. If you triple the distance, intensity becomes 9 times smaller. Now let's consider what plants do with the glucose they produce through photosynthesis. Plants use glucose in five main ways. First, glucose provides energy through respiration. Just like animals, plants need energy to power their cellular processes. They obtain this energy by breaking down glucose during respiration. Second, plants convert excess glucose into starch for storage. Starch is insoluble, making it better for storage than glucose. Glucose is soluble and would draw in water, causing cells to swell up. Third, glucose can be converted into cellulose, which is used to build strong plant cell walls. These walls provide structure and support for the plant. Fourth, plants can combine glucose with nitrate ions absorbed from the soil to make amino acids. These amino acids are then assembled into proteins. Proteins serve many vital functions, including acting as enzymes that control chemical reactions in the plant. Finally, glucose can be stored as fats and oils, particularly in seeds. These provide a concentrated energy source for future germination and growth. Understanding photosynthesis and its limiting factors has important practical applications. In agriculture, farmers and gardeners create controlled environments like greenhouses to optimize conditions. Greenhouses help trap heat, maintaining optimal temperatures even when outside conditions are unfavorable. They can be equipped with heaters in winter or ventilation and shade in summer. Commercial growers often supplement natural light with artificial lighting. This ensures plants receive adequate light even on cloudy days or during shorter winter days. Carbon dioxide levels can be increased by using paraffin heaters or by adding CO2 directly. Enclosed greenhouse environments also make it easier to protect plants from pests and diseases. By manipulating these limiting factors, farmers can create ideal conditions for plant growth. This leads to increased yields and more efficient crop production. Before we get into the details, here's what's coming up. First, we'll clarify what respiration really is and how it differs from breathing. Next, we'll examine the two types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. Then we'll look at how our bodies respond during exercise when energy demands increase. Finally, we'll explore the concept of oxygen debt and how our bodies recover after intense exercise. Respiration is the process of transferring energy from the breakdown of glucose. It happens continuously in every living cell of your body. It's important to understand that respiration is not the same as breathing. Breathing, or ventilation, is simply moving air in and out of your lungs. Respiration, on the other hand, involves many chemical reactions that transfer the energy cells need for all living processes. All living things respire, not just animals, but plants, fungi, and even single celled organisms. It's how they transfer energy from their food to their cells. Respiration is an exothermic process. This means it releases energy in the form of heat as well as usable energy for the cell. There are two main types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. The key difference is whether oxygen is used in the process. Aerobic respiration uses oxygen. It's the most efficient way to transfer energy from glucose. The word equation for aerobic respiration is glucose plus oxygen equals carbon dioxide plus water. There is also a chemical form of this equation. Aerobic respiration happens all the time in plants and animals. Most of the reactions take place inside specialized structures called mitochondria. This process releases a large amount of energy from each glucose molecule because the oxidation of glucose is complete when oxygen is available. Anaerobic respiration occurs when there isn't enough oxygen available. The word anaerobic literally means without oxygen. In human muscle cells, anaerobic respiration produces lactic acid. This incomplete breakdown of glucose releases much less energy than aerobic respiration. This is because glucose isn't fully oxidized in anaerobic conditions. Plants and yeast cells can also respire without oxygen, but they produce different end products. Their anaerobic respiration creates ethanol and carbon dioxide instead of lactic acid. This process in yeast cells is called fermentation. It has important economic applications in bread making and producing alcoholic drinks. In bread making, it's the carbon dioxide from fermentation that makes bread rise. In beer and wine making, it's the fermentation process that produces alcohol. Now let's look at how our bodies respond to exercise when energy demands increase dramatically. When you exercise, your muscles need more energy from respiration to contract more frequently than normal. This increased need for energy means your cells need more oxygen and must remove carbon dioxide more quickly. To meet this demand, several things happen in your body. Your breathing rate and breath volume increase. This gets more oxygen into your blood and removes carbon dioxide more efficiently. Your heart rate increases to pump this oxygenated blood around your body faster. During moderate exercise, these adaptations are usually sufficient to supply your muscles with the oxygen they need for aerobic respiration. However, during vigorous exercise like sprinting, your body cannot supply oxygen to your muscles quickly enough. When this happens, your muscles start respiring anaerobically as well as aerobically. This produces lactic acid, which builds up in the muscles and can cause pain and fatigue. Long periods of exercise can cause muscle fatigue. The muscles get tired and stop contracting efficiently. After intense exercise involving anaerobic respiration, you'll have what's called an oxygen debt. This is the amount of extra oxygen your body needs to recover after exercise. This oxygen is used to react with the lactic acid that has built up and remove it from the cells. In other words, you need to repay the oxygen that you didn't get while you were exercising intensely. This is why you continue breathing hard for a while after you stop exercising. Your pulse and breathing rate stay high while there are high levels of lactic acid and carbon dioxide in your blood. Your body also has another way of coping with lactic acid. Blood that enters your muscles transports the lactic acid to the liver. In the liver, the lactic acid is converted back into glucose. Understanding respiration helps us appreciate how our bodies produce the energy needed for everything from basic cellular functions to intense physical activity. In our next episode, we'll explore metabolism. Today, we're defining metabolism and its relationship to cellular activities, looking at how enzymes control metabolic reactions, examining synthesis reactions where cells build large molecules, and finally exploring the breakdown reactions that release energy. Metabolism encompasses all the chemical reactions that happen in an organism. Every cell in your body is constantly carrying out thousands of chemical reactions. These reactions allow your body to grow, reproduce, maintain its structures, and respond to its environment. All of these reactions are controlled by enzymes. Enzymes are biological catalysts that speed up chemical reactions without being used up themselves. Many of these reactions are linked together to form sequences or pathways. The product of one reaction becomes the reactant for the next. Metabolism includes two main types of reactions: those that build up complex molecules and those that break down molecules. Let's look first at how cells build larger molecules from smaller ones. These synthesis reactions are essential for growth and repair. One important example is the formation of carbohydrates. Lots of small glucose molecules can be joined together to form larger molecules. In plant cells, glucose is converted into starch for energy storage and cellulose for cell walls. In animal cells, glucose molecules are linked to form glycogen, which is stored in the liver and muscles. Lipid molecules are another example. They're synthesized from two types of building blocks: glycerol and three fatty acids. These lipids are vital for cell membranes and energy storage. Proteins are formed when glucose is combined with nitrate ions to make amino acids. These amino acids are then linked together to form proteins. Proteins serve countless functions in your body, from structural components to enzymes that control reactions. Just as important as building things up is breaking them down. Your body also needs to break larger molecules into smaller ones. The most significant breakdown reaction is respiration. As we saw in our previous episode, respiration breaks down glucose to release energy. This energy powers all the other reactions in the body that make molecules. Another important breakdown process happens with excess proteins. These are broken down in a reaction to produce urea. The urea is then excreted in urine, removing nitrogen waste from the body. Metabolism is a careful balance between these building up and breaking down processes. Both are essential for life. Together, they maintain the delicate balance that keeps you alive and functioning.